I understand we haven't done the interview yet, but you can plant seeds and say, alright, well this is, I'm thinking about doing this. Is this on the right track?
Hey, welcome back to another scintillating edition of the American Workplace Bully. There are many items we'll go over in this third chapter of the series, most of which covers the immediate supervisor, Lena. But before we do that, I'd like to first talk about an important and relevant film and a personal favorite of mine, Amadeus. For those who haven't seen the film, here's a brief synopsis. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a naturally gifted musician whose career is sabotaged by an inadequate musician, the Emperor's court composer, Antonio Salieri, who also just happens to be the official authority on music within the empire. Although the film deviates slightly from the actual history, there is this underlying theme that applies in today's society, that there are two kinds of people, the Mozarts who make the world move, and the Salieris who finagle their way into power. In theory, a Mozart and a Salieri can accomplish great things together. However, in practical application, the Salieri's insecurities always comes to the forefront of priorities, and are ultimately destructive to both sides. In this chapter, you will hear a similar tale, and by the end, you will be thoroughly disgusted. Because this chapter is the smoking gun evidence proving Lena as being a manipulator, a liar, and a saboteur. And it will clear my name from all of the baseless accusations Fox News and Fox 7 Austin unfairly used to determine my future with the company. This installment will be separated into 3 different videos for your convenience. As always, there are no unfair edits, and the full audio will be released at a later date. Alright, there's a lot of esoteric terminology in the audio, so let's go ahead and define those right now. A topical is basically a daily promotion of the newscast. The daybook is a database that contains the rough info for the daily stories. Okay, on to the first audio clips. The immediate supervisor, Lena, instigated a situation that needs to be addressed by the department head, Kathy. This lecture on deadlines took place in Kathy's office on April 10th, 2014.
Alright, so the timeline that I just kind of come up with based on the emails that have gone back and forth, and I've been reviewing topicals, I've done topicals, I've done everything for many, many years, and I have some other comments to make as I go through my explanation on this. I do think it is often, not always, but often unrealistic to have a script written and ready to go at 4:30, okay? But I do expect you to come in fully prepared, having read the 5P, having gotten as much as you can from the reporters, having read the daybook. I cannot tell you, not only with you, but with other producers as well, how it's like I can go to the daybook and I can tell them more about the story than they walked in here with it, whatever time we are reviewing the topicals, which is unacceptable. If it's in the daybook, you should know it, okay, period. You should read the daybook before you go to the 1 o'clock meeting, and it should tell you what the details of the story. So I think it's the 4:30 p.m. Is the absolute last deadline for being as informed as you possibly can be on the stories in hand, and coming in and having some ideas for your copy, some ideas for the stories to promote, and have a discussion about this is what we're going to promote tonight, and what angle we're going to take, and what the audience is watching, and who's whatever. And here's some copy I wrote. Well, we're not going to promote that story now, or whatever. By 5 o'clock, after that discussion, you should have a script pretty well advanced based on the discussion that was had at 4:30, preferably before 5 o'clock. By 5:15, if Lena and I don't have a script, if we're at that point, we don't have a script unless, there are many factors. Everybody wants hard and steadfast rules, and if we're in a breaking news business. You have to be reactive, you have to be efficient, you have to be on top of things, and so you can't, you get this 5:15 in your head, or whatever time in your head. There are going to be times when you can't do it, okay, and we understand that. But by 5:15, what I will do is by 5:15, I don't have a script that's ready to go. I'm going to start writing it myself to get to wrap up the day, And again, there are going to be times when there's breaking news, when there's things in the story that haven't come up. But 5:15 is not the time to come in with your first round of your script, because as I have found, in addition to Lena, it does take a long time of going back and forth. So you can't come in at 5:15 and say, here's my script, and then it's going to take another 30 minutes to hash it out. And that's your kind of, this is your, let's say everything is perfect and you can get, that's on a day that there's not breaking news or whatever. But I feel like working with you on the topicals does take some time, and that walking in at 5:15 and being that your deadline for your script, it should be done by 5:15 on most days. So Lena's 4:30 deadline is not expecting you to be in with a fully written, perfect script, but it's for you to come in prepared and knowledgeable and ready to talk about the stories and not have me or her telling you things that we've read in the daybook or in the Bible or whatever. That your job is to come in prepared. I usually prepare for that conversation by looking through. It takes me about less than 5 minutes to read the 5 o'clock show and do the daybook and flip to the daybook.
All right, sidebar. As you can clearly see, Kathy has a very quiet demeanor. Sorry to put you through that, but I wanted you to see exactly what I was going through with Kathy, mostly spitballing for memorized speeches, and what Lorena was feeding her. Being that Kathy is unusually cordial and not angry, tells me Kathy is uninvolved and only catering to her hand-picked manager's contrived crisis. So how do I know it's contrived? Just keep watching. You'll know it when you see it.
Well, just like in the case of yesterday, going to the assignment desk is not going to help.
We're not stuck. We're not going to be stuck on that. Sometimes they can help, and
they didn't know anything.
Okay.
As expected.
Okay, the assignment desk streamlines news information and organizes the daily influx of press releases. Essentially, they're the nerve center of a newscast. And Fox 7 Austin has a phenomenal assignment desk team. So when I say they didn't know anything as expected, it's not a slight, but what I already knew. They had no information on a reporter who was at the time chasing a huge interview.
Had you talked to them before you? I think the issue yesterday was you came in somewhat prepared, not having looked at everything. And I've had that experience with you as well.
Yes,
where
I was prepared as far as I was able to talk to all the reporters, and I was getting more information from reporters than I get from the assignment desk. The thing is that was working on something else. That she was getting some extra stuff. She got the interview with a senator who was going to investigate or have a hearing on the violent sex offenders. That was new. So that's why I am always keeping in touch with all the reporters.
Well, you should.
That's where the true, all the facts come through. It's directly for them.
Yeah, but there are many days that's not the case. There are many days when you can find out everything that you need to know from reading the rundown.
I haven't had that experience yet because I know exactly how they're going to approach the story, and I want to reflect it exactly how they approach the story. I don't want to say something different and then have them contradict it. So that's why it's best to go to the source than to get someone's opinion on it or whatever. I talked to the producer. The producer doesn't know. They're busy writing the stories. I've asked. Yeah, and I do my due diligence. So
But I have felt sometimes that you do come in unprepared based on the information that's in front of you, that you have at your fingertips.
Well, sometimes, I think, or there was a case with a story. I think it was a Carter interview. He didn't have the bikes in when I was looking at the story. So when it came
between the time that you left after our initial discussion and you came back, they had been in there because I had looked at them.
Yes, and I printed those.
Well, I'm not going to get into. I'm not going to sit here and get nitpicky about semantics. I'm going to say that this is what the expectation is. We're not going to go back and forth and say this and that. I'm saying that there's sometimes when you can be better prepared. The expectation is for you to be as prepared as humanly possible at 4:30.
Yes, but I just wanted to, I do my due diligence on this. I am.
But sometimes you might be that's why the 4:30 conversation is really important. You come in, you discuss it. Sometimes you do due diligence on stories that we may not be planning on, that may not be relevant to promote.
Didn't Kathy just say my job was to come in prepared? Now Kathy is carping about coming in overly prepared? Can someone point out the logic here? Please?
I'm real easy to figure out. It's just, I want to make sure we put on the product that's going to best draw in the rate.
But I feel like that at least with my experience with you, I still feel like there's a lot of discussion that we have, and there's a lot of times where I don't feel like you've got the insight or where you're on the right track with every story every time. And that's why we need more time to develop the strategy, and we need to do that before 5:15.
So Kathy feels like I don't have keen insight. Perhaps I should have been more prepared for her misguided opinion. Alright, I'm going to grab one more Kathy excerpt, and then we'll focus primarily on Lorena.
The milestones of our discussion here are that fully prepared at 4:30. You're fully prepared to discuss at 4:30 because normally I will have, or Lorena will have done some homework as well on the story. So you're not coming in and informing us you're giving us updates, but whatever, we've done a little bit. We've been in the meeting and we've looked at the story. No later than 5, preferably before after the discussion, you're back with a pretty long target script based on the discussion that you've had.
Alright, it's important to remember Kathy said Lorena would do her homework.
But, like I said, I'm always going to do my due diligence as best as possible. Sometimes the information's not there, but I'll go with the best information I have available.
That's all that you can do. Lena, would you?
It's a great idea before you go down to the 1 o'clock meeting to look in the day book and see what's going on and read everything that's going on. So let me finish. So if it's going on many times, what they're doing is already planned. That way you know what they're doing. So when they're there, you can talk to them in person and ask them questions about their story. I understand they haven't done the interview yet, but you can plant seeds and say, all right, well, this is, I'm thinking about doing this. Is this on the right track? Great time to have a question and answer with the reporter.
I'm always in communication with the reporter.
But that's not what I said.
With the day book,
that's not what I said.
Hang on a second. With the day book, though, sometimes it's just there's a title, but it's a blank. And
Sometimes, yeah, and then you don't have anything to read. You can't create something
that's usually doesn't get filled in until much later.
I'm not saying that this is for every story, but most of the time I can go in there before the 1 o'clock meeting and I know what's going on before the 1 o'clock meeting.
Just as long as you're aware of that.
Did you see that? Lorena's quick turnaround? Lorena is very skilled at her craft of being slippery. When Kathy contradicted Lorena's advice on how to do my job, she quickly changed her words. But the most important words Lorena let slip gives you the insight into her personality. What kind of person says plant seeds as a tactic? These are the words of a manipulator. Okay, more evidence of Lorena's slipperiness in this meeting, and then we'll get to the next audio clip.
I've talked to such and such, I've checked with producers, I've checked with, desk, I've read the assignments, rundown, I've read the 5P, rundown stories, there's many times where I've asked you, and I've read too, the stories in the 5P, and they clear as day, they have all the bites there. And sometimes we've got some great copy that actually helps, our spots. And I think that it's very beneficial, just to read the direction of the story and get the bites. It makes it actually easier for us.
These are printouts of the stories. I do this on a daily basis.
I'm talking about the 5 o'clock stuff.
This is at 5 o'clock.
Okay, well they're constantly, changing things too. So, and I get that too, but you just gotta check, things change all the time.
Go ahead and laugh because I did too. It would be funny if it weren't so serious. Now let's get to the events that happened the day before. And yes, any clear-thinking person will be absolutely disgusted by what you're about to hear.
Yeah, I'm trying to get info from her. She hasn't texted me back, so...
Okay, you have to ask. You don't know where she's at and what she's going to do.
Well, she's in the rally, but she said she also had something and she hasn't texted back.
Does Beth know, or the producer know anything about it?
No.
Nobody else knows what happened?
She's working on it.
Did you talk to the desk, or?
The desk doesn't know much of anything other than just where she's at.
So you talked to them about the story and they don't know what they said? No.
I'll talk to them again.
Well, I was just asking you if you I mean, really, yes or no, so that's why I was asking.
Okay.
Did you talk to the desk?
Talk to the desk.
About
I'll ask him
Ashley?
again. I'll ask him again.
I was just wondering, if you've already talked to them specifically about the story, you don't need to, ask them again. I was just asking them to give me a straight answer, so that's why I asked them. Did you talk to them about the story?
I think how much you asked me the same
Well, you didn't answer me, so that's why I'm asking you again.
Did you hear that laugh? It can only be one of 3 reasons: nervousness, bemusement, or joy. Based on subsequent events, I'm inclined to believe it's joy.
Okay, let me talk to him again. Alright?
So, does that mean...
I'll talk to him again, see what the deal is.
Does that mean, yes, you talked to them already about her story?
What does it matter?
I just want to know, did you talk to them about her story yet or not? So I can properly direct you...
We talked earlier about what everything... Anyways.
I'm sorry.
Anyways.
So can you tell me, just simply a direct answer, yes or no? Did you talk to the desk about her story? So are you deciding not to answer me, or I don't understand what's going on? I'm just asking you a simple question. Yes, that's why I'm trying to direct you on on the best stuff to do. So
They're not going to know anything more than what knows already. All they know right now
so
is
no.
where they're at.
So the answer is no. You haven't talked about them about.
I'll ask them.
So why don't you let's go. So that way, when you go to them with all your questions, and you don't go to them for each individual question. The best way to handle news is to talk to them with everything at once and hit them with bullet points. That's how you're going to get the best stuff out of them.
The best stuff I get out of them is through the reporter directly.
That's great. I absolutely agree. I totally agree. But sometimes the reporter's unavailable, and you need to have answers. And the desk or the producer is usually your best source in that case.
Well, you've now seen Lorena's sadistic side. But where's the law, you ask? I'm glad you've asked me that question. We'll have to go back to the next day just before the lecture. My workday starts at 10:30 a.m., so when I logged in to check for email, this is the morning greeting I got from Lorena. And I'll go ahead and read it to you, but you'll have to forgive me for not capturing Lorena's passive-aggressive tone. Philip, yesterday when we met to discuss the stories we were going to tease for the night, you came unprepared. It is important to review all your information before we meet so that we, together, can make the best decision. Here are specific items that you need to review before we meet to discuss the topics to promote for topicals. Lesson number 331 in management. If you know you've done something wrong, always point fingers first. I also must commend Lorena for her restraint. I'm surprised she didn't gleefully run to Kathy the moment it happened. And here's my diplomatic response to Lorena. Seriously, Lorena, I respect your feedback, but you are in error. I keep in constant contact with the producer and the reporters and do my due diligence, which they can verify. Sometimes they don't get back to me in time for review. The daybook is looked at, however, they won't have the entire information of how the reporter will angle their story. When scripts are written, I will review those as well, depending on the time. They will not have the bites of their subjects. The desk had no idea where the reporter was yesterday, which is why I rely upon the reporters as they are a direct source of information. The problem may lie in your desire to review early and have a script ready by 4:30 p.m. Most reporters aren't finished with interviews at that time, and so we have to rely upon guesswork until we get more solid information. I recommend going back to the uniform 5:15 deadline that was agreed upon. This should resolve the issues you've brought up. I hope you've noticed the 4:30 deadline theme in this chapter. This is relevant because Lorena ordered this apparently without Kathy's knowledge, and we'll get to that in 3-2. But first, here comes the lie. I'll read the email exactly as Lorena wrote it. Yesterday, when I asked you if you multiple times if you had touched base with the assignment desk, you answered no.
Liar.
When I asked you if you had read the assignments for a story in the 9 p.m., you said no, but you will. When I asked you if you read the 5 p.m. scripts, you said you weren't sure if that story had been written. These are all items that need to be addressed before we or you and Kathy meet. Reporters are rarely ready to tell details when we want information.
Liar.
You are a veteran of the business. I know you are capable of working around, gathering the details, and writing a promo. Also, the 4:30 deadline was accomplished prior to you doing the 9 p.m. and was actually met at 3:30 p.m/4 p.m. Also, from my experience of doing the 9 p.m. topicals, I know it's possible. Therefore, I am confident 4:30 is not an unreasonable request. In fact, it is rather late. If you'd like to move it earlier, we can, but 4:30 remains the deadline. Not only passive-aggressive, but condescending as well. And a liar to boot. I certainly hope Fox News executives are watching right now, because I seem to recall a certain GM taking issue claiming I set up my boss. So what is this exactly? Well, I'll let GM Mike say those words for me.
I can't tell you how below the standards of our position you have reached by doing something like that. It's just not how we operate.
So basically, the evidence presented thus far establishes how Lorena is manipulative, a liar, and a saboteur, contriving a crisis just to make me look bad in front of other management. And unfortunately, given the end results, it worked. Now, before I close out 3-1, I need to point out a key detail both Kathy and Lorena missed. For all the carping about reading the daybook and checking in with the assignment desk, you would think, since they're managers, they would know who usually fills in the daybook with info. Any guesses? The assignment desk. Alright, this concludes 3-1. Please continue on to 3-2 at your convenience. We'll be going over more of Lorena's sadistic qualities and why I believe she's a fraud. Thank you for watching.
I can't tell you how below the standards of our position you have reached by doing something like that. It's just not how we operate. Not how we operate. Not how we operate. Operate.